How loud does your inner critic get? How many times when you're about to step through to change, your inner critic becomes the torturous voice that stops you dead in your tracks? In this video, we're going to look at a couple of simple ways that we can change the way we think of our inner critic and take on those changes that we want to make. I'm Ben Netterfield, I'm a leadership coach, and in this video we're looking at how our inner critic can put the biggest handbrakes on the dreams, our aspirations and our goals more than any sometimes external voices that we can hear. Sometimes our inner voice is loud, rude, obnoxious, unrelenting. Sometimes it's quiet, seeping through into our unconscious brain and making us feel that we haven't any self-worth, haven't any possible way that we can step forward and make the changes that we want to make. So how do we take on this inner voice? The problem is our inner critic gets a huge, big, free swing at us all the time. It's very hard to talk our inner critic down. It's very hard to ignore that voice. We waste so much emotional energy trying to contradict, trying to shut down our inner critic. And in fact, sometimes the easiest way to do that is actually look at our inner critic in the way that it's meant, which was to be protective, to make us stay without change, without stepping outside our lane. The only trouble with this is, of course, if we want to make change, if we want to make our lives bigger, if we want to make our lives better, that we obviously need to make those changes and we need to change the habits that we've already got. So let's look at the two simple things that can actually help change from our inner critic being the biggest bully that we have to the person that can be embraced and thought of as a marker for the fact that we are making the changes we want. So instead of it being a signpost that we're doing the wrong thing, it becomes a signpost for the things that we're actually moving towards. So often to tackle the inner critic that we have to look at things slightly differently. So one of the best things I've found is actually looking at something that Theodore Roosevelt talked about. And it's actually looking at more at the way that we often interact with where we felt we're being watched by others and we're being criticized by others, and it's about getting into the arena itself and making sure that we put ourselves first. We're the one trying to do the task, we're the one trying to fulfill the gains we want to make, and we're the ones that are taking the risk to get the reward at the end. So in this passage he talks about, it is not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles, or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly or errs or comes short again and again, because therefore is no effort without error or shortcomings, but who does actually strive to do the deeds, who gets great enthusiasm and great endeavours. He spends himself in a worthy cause, who is at the best knows in the end of triumph of higher achievement, and who at the worst, if he fails, at least he fails while daring greatly, so that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who neither knew victory nor defeat. And so this is obviously a great way of thinking about those external critics that we have that don't let us go out and try and perform and try and do new things. But if you think of it, that little twist of the tail is if we think of our inner critic as the same way. Our inner critic is trying to watch us from afar, trying to make us not take the risk, trying to make us not do the thing that we want to do. If you think of that statement again, and that statement instead of the external voices that are criticizing us, but also of the internal voices that are criticizing us. And this can help us switch and change around to the things that we want to do and the understanding the risk we're taking for the reward we want. It's always all too easy for the person sitting on the sideline to criticize those that are in the arena. But it's also sometimes easy for ourselves to criticize and be harsh to ourselves about not trying, about making sure each effort isn't absolutely perfect. So why try at all? If we think of that switch, that small incidental switch of I want to do this, making sure I have embraced this challenge, making sure I understand the risk and rewards, but also I have actually looked forward to the discomfort. I'm looking forward to this. The other thing I want to feel, and the second thing I want to feel, is that feeling of discomfort, because this is actually what I'm looking for. To make the changes I want to do, I've actually got to feel this uncomfortable. I've got to feel this churning in my stomach, this butterflies, the uncertainty. That's telling me I'm actually heading in the right direction, because if I'm not feeling those things, I'm staying in my safe place, I'm staying in my safe zone. So the inner critic can be loud, the inner critic can be ruthless in its demands for us not to do something. And yet, if I turn that feeling around and actually use it as my signpost to say to myself, when I'm feeling those things, that's actually what I want to embrace. It's those feelings of uncertainty, those feelings of not being sure, and yet stepping through and doing them anyway. So I turn my inner critic into a signpost of the changes I want to make instead of the roadblocks that it's holding me against. It's reminding ourselves to take the small steps of change. There's lots of small steps to change. Change isn't done with one big glorious moment, but it's often about the hard slog of little moments. And that's why the inner critic gets so many free swings at us, because change takes time, it takes momentum, it takes the doing of things before the motivation. And there is nothing surer than the fact that we need to do the things before the motivation happens. And this is why the inner critic gets so much time and headspace to be able to do those things, because it takes us time to get the momentum going for the change to become solid and consolidated. So if you think of it that way, that the inner critic gets to have a lot of free swings at us. The inner critic gets to have a lot of say, but we can use that as a road mark and a map towards the things we want to do. If the inner critic is being loud, I notice it, I can name it, and then I can change it. So instead of walking away from your inner critic, instead of trying to debate your inner critic, instead of feeling that you have to validate yourself against your inner critic, just notice it for what it is. Notice it as a roadmap to the fact that that's telling me I'm on the path to change and I'm feeling uncomfortable. Use your inner critic to do the thing that you want to do rather than a roadblock to do the things that you can't. I hope this little video helps, and leave me a comment about how your inner critic and what sometimes that you called your inner critic. There's some great names, some clients have come up some wonderful things about what they call their inner critic or inner critics. And sometimes it's a thing that they use on a daily basis, sometimes it's a weekly thing, but it really allows them to turn the white noise down of the inner critic and step forward to what they want to do. I hope you like this video. Please like and subscribe. My name is Ben Nedfield. I'll catch you on the next one. Remember to be kind, and the most important person to be kind to is yourself. Take care. See you on the next one.